AITA for exposing my family after they faked my mom's illness to take $15,000 from me? My name is Amanda, I am 33 years old, and I work in accounting at a mid-sized company in a corporate park. I am not a millionaire, but I do well enough to rent a one-bedroom apartment in a quiet suburb, pay my bills without falling behind, and have real savings, the kind that don't disappear on impulse buys. My life is orderly. I like everything to add up. I pay on time, I meal prep for the week on Sundays, and I have a budget spreadsheet that I review every Friday. My friends say I'm boring. I don't care. I prefer being boring to living with a knot in my stomach from debt. My family is the exact opposite. My parents, Sharon and Frank, are in their 50s and have a special talent for ignoring any plan. My mom worked part-time at a department store until last year, when one day she decided she just couldn't take it anymore and deserved to rest. My dad picks up construction jobs whenever it suits him, which lately is almost never. They live paycheck to paycheck when there is a paycheck. And then there is my younger sister, Haley. She is 28. She works at a coffee shop, but only when she isn't focused on her art. She paints abstract things that look like finger paintings from elementary school, but she presents herself as an artist. She has been living for over a year in a tiny old studio apartment in a not-so-great part of the city. Even so, she thought it was perfect because she said it gave her inspiration. And guess who has been paying that rent? Yes, me. First, it was an emergency thing. 3 years ago, my parents called me crying because they didn't have enough to cover the mortgage payment. Just this once, they told me, "It's really urgent." I sent them $1,000. Then it happened again the next month and the next. And without realizing it, it became the norm. I ended up setting up a recurring transfer of $1,500 every month to them because honestly it was easier than dealing with the drama. It was the same with Haley. Last year she called me crying, saying she was about to get evicted. "Just help me this once please," she begged. Her rent was $750 a month, more than she made most of the time. I figured that if I paid that for her, at least she would have a stable roof over her head and maybe with some peace of mind she would settle down. I had no problem helping out, or so I kept telling myself. So when my mom called me on a Tuesday to invite me to dinner on Friday, I said yes. We try to do a family dinner at least once a month, although it almost always ends the same way. It usually involves me eating whatever my mom made, while they complain about their problems, as if the world owed them something. On Friday, I arrived at 6 o'clock sharp as always. My parents' house is in an older part of town, on one of those streets where everything looks a little tired. They have let it deteriorate because fixing it is expensive. The gate squeaks, the paint is peeling, and the porch has been sagging for years, as if it were about to give up. I walked in and saw Haley on the couch, glued to a guy I had never seen before. He was tall, skinny, with a patchy 2-day beard. Haley was laughing as if he were telling her the funniest story in the world. "Amanda," she said, jumping up to hug me, "I have to introduce you to someone very special. This is Dylan, my fiancé." I stood there blinking. "You're what?" "We got engaged," she said, showing me her left hand with a tiny ring featuring a little stone that sparkled more out of illusion than anything else. "When did this happen?" I asked, trying to make my voice sound normal. "Recently," Haley said, pressing herself closer to him. Dylan stood up and shook my hand. "Nice to meet you. Haley talks about you a lot. You are the successful sister." It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it, as if that word came with a price tag. I smiled politely. "Congratulations." We sat down to dinner. My mom brought out the usual. Dry-baked chicken, somewhat clumpy rice, and a salad that looked more like water than anything else. My dad asked Dylan what he did for a living. "I'm between jobs," Dylan replied, as if it were a very interesting temporary phase. "But I have some big things in the works." Haley looked at him as if he had discovered fire. We were halfway through dinner when Haley put down her fork and made that, "Here comes the important part" face. "Well, I have something to ask you all." I braced myself internally. Here we go again, I thought. Another crisis, another favor, another just this once. Dylan's parents invited us to go spend a week with them in Los Cabos, Haley said, her eyes lighting up. "They say they want to get to know me better, that it would be perfect to spend time together before the wedding." I nodded slowly. "Sounds nice." Haley took a deep breath. The catch is that the trip costs about $13,000 for the four of us. And when she said the four of us, she looked right at me. My parents did too. Dylan as well. I calmly put down my fork. I am not paying for that trip, I said. Haley pursed her lips. Amanda, it's for me. I looked at her as if I were explaining something obvious. You can bond with your in-laws without spending that amount. They can come over for dinner, go to a park, take a walk, do something normal. Bonding cannot be bought. Haley's face soured. Dylan leaned forward with an annoyed expression he didn't bother to hide. Excuse me, but that sounds rude, Dylan said. Your parents told me you always help them out, that you're the one who bails the family out when needed. This is important for our relationship. And right then I understood. The idea wasn't just Haley's. Dylan was talking about the trip as if it were already decided, as if the only thing missing was for me to pay. My stomach tied in a knot. So they had already discussed it with this guy, a stranger. They told him how I sent them money, as if I were an ATM that turns on every month. I stared at Dylan and felt an ugly sense of clarity. He was just like them. Another one coming with his hand out, only with a smile. I am not going to throw money away on a vacation, I said, watching my tone. But when you're planning the actual wedding, then I can help you with something that matters. Haley opened her mouth as if to argue. I raised my hand to cut her off. This topic is closed. The rest of the dinner was pure ice. Haley gave me dirty looks every time I turned around. Dylan didn't even speak to me. My parents exchanged little glances as if they were evaluating how disappointing I had become. I no longer cared. I ate, helped clear the table out of habit, and left. Several weeks passed after that dinner, and my phone remained completely silent. No text from my mom asking how I was, no silly memes from Haley, no calls from my dad asking me to come over and help him with something. My family is dramatic, yes, but they had never given me the silent treatment like this. Even when we fought, within a few days someone would try to fix things. This felt different. One Thursday afternoon I did something I almost never do. I showed up unannounced with a peace offering. Near my office there is a good bakery, the kind that hurts a little because of the price but makes you look good. I bought an apple cinnamon pie. It was my mom's favorite. It cost me about $45, but it was one of those desserts that makes people remember it's not worth being mad at each other. I told my boss I had a family matter and needed to leave early. It wasn't a lie. I left early to avoid getting stuck in the afternoon traffic. Even so, I endured the usual slow crawl, the stoplights, the city buses, the city squeezing in. I drove to my parents' house with the pie in hand, mentally rehearsing an apology. Not because I felt I was wrong, but because I was getting tired of the atmosphere. I still had a key to the house from my college days. They never asked for it back, and I never thought I would one day need to explain it. I walked in carefully, and then I heard voices in the kitchen, loud voices, the kind that aren't casual conversation. I stopped myself before calling out, "I'm here," because they hadn't heard me come in. Then I heard Haley clearly. "I really want to go to Los Cabos with Dylan and his parents, but I don't have the money. Amanda is being really stingy about this." I froze. My mom's voice came next, calm, as if she were talking about what to buy at the grocery store. "Don't worry, your dad and I have already thought about how to get the money out of her." I felt my throat tighten. "I'm going to say my arthritis got worse and that I need a special treatment. You know how Amanda is. If you talk to her about doctors, she gets scared and caves in." And they laughed. They laughed as if it were a hilarious joke. "How much are you going to ask her for?" Haley asked anxiously. $15,000, my mom said. "That covers the trip and leaves us enough to catch up on things around the house." "Great," my dad said, jumping into the conversation. "Amanda has always been really naive about those things. She believes everything." I really waited for my mom to stop him, to say something like, "Don't say that," to defend me even a little. My mom laughed harder. "You know what the truth is," she said, as if confessing a funny secret. "When Amanda cooperates, then she is a good daughter. When she doesn't, she just annoys us with her lists, her scolding, and her way of wanting to control everything." I felt like throwing up. The pie box felt heavy, as if it were filled with stones. I moved toward the door without making a sound. I stepped out and closed it carefully. I took a deep breath, as if the air could help me process what I had just heard. And then I did something that surprised even me. I knocked on the door again as if I had just arrived. "Coming!" my mom yelled with a cheerful voice that disgusted me because of how fake it was. She opened the door, and her face lit up. "Amanda, what a lovely surprise. Come in, come in." I walked back into that same house, holding the same pie, looking at the same woman who had just said I was only worth something when I cooperated. "Look who is here," my mom sang toward the kitchen. My dad and Haley came out with huge smiles, the kind that feel taped on. "Mandy," Haley said, running to hug me as if weeks hadn't passed without speaking to me. "I brought pie," I said, lifting the box. "How sweet of you," my dad said, patting me on the shoulder. "Sit down, let's have some coffee." We sat at the kitchen table, in the exact same spot where a minute ago they were planning to scam me. My mom poured coffee, cut the pie, and talked nonstop about how nice it looked, how thoughtful I was, how much they missed me. I watched them with new eyes. Haley's smile didn't reach her eyes. My dad kept looking over at my mom as if they were sharing an inside joke, and my mom spoke a little higher than normal when she faked excitement. It made me angry to think that maybe it had always been this way and I just didn't want to see it. My mom sat down with her plate and suddenly grimaced. "Oh, this arthritis is really getting to me," she said, grabbing her wrist and then her lower back. "It's hitting me harder lately." I took a sip of coffee. "Oh, really?" "Yes," my mom continued, watching me out of the corner of her eye to gauge my reaction. "In the mornings, my hands are so stiff. It's hard for me to even hold a mug, and I can't even sleep well anymore. It is a constant pain." She flexed her fingers as if demonstrating a tragedy. Haley made a concerned noise. My dad sighed as if carrying the weight of the world. "How awful," I said without changing my expression. My mom shifted in her chair, being dramatic. "I'm thinking I'll have to go to a specialist because they keep giving me the runaround at my regular doctor. And if I want to start quickly, it would have to be out of pocket. You know how insurance is." I nodded, looked at my watch, and put on a serious face. "Geez, I just remembered I have to head back. A problem came up at work." My mom blinked in confusion. "What? But you just got here." "Yes, sorry," I said, standing up. "Thanks for the coffee. We'll talk later." I kissed my mom on the cheek, hugged Haley and my dad, and left. As I walked to my car, I managed to see them through the window. They stood there as if they didn't understand why their performance hadn't worked. I drove to my apartment on autopilot. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I arrived, double-locked the door, sat on the couch, and finally allowed myself to get truly angry. $2,250 a month. That was what I had been sending them for years between one thing and another. $1,500 to my parents, $750 for Haley's rent. It was madness, a brutal amount over a year, and they laughed. They called me naive. They said I was only a good daughter when I cooperated. My anger didn't stay just anger. It turned into something colder, clearer. "Do you want to play?" I thought. Fine. I know how to play too. Over the following days, I acted as if nothing had happened. When my mom texted me asking how I was, I replied normally. When she started slipping the arthritis topic into the messages, I answered with "That's too bad," and "I hope you feel better soon." But I offered no money. Nothing. My mom gradually dialed it up. First, it was general complaints, then symptoms, then supposed doctor visits. One night she wrote to me, "The doctor says it's getting complicated, and if I don't start treatment now I could get worse." I replied, "That's a bummer. I hope you find a good treatment." A few minutes later, "It's just that it is super expensive and our insurance doesn't cover everything." Me? How frustrating, truly. I could feel the confusion on the other end because the normal thing was that by that point I would already be asking how much they needed and when to send the money. Instead, I played dumb. It went on like this for 3 weeks. My mom became more obvious. She sent me notes about treatments, told me about a specialized clinic, and invented stories about a friend who improved a lot, until one Wednesday night when she finally called me. I was on the couch eating a quick dinner and watching a series when the phone rang. "Amanda, my love," my mom said in a serious voice. "We have to talk. Can you come over for dinner this weekend? There's something important we need to discuss about my health." I smiled to myself. This was the moment they had been setting up ever since I overheard their plan. On Saturday, I arrived right on time. Haley and Dylan were already there, sitting on the couch with rehearsed looks of concern. My mom walked very slowly, as if every step was a feat. My dad offered her help with everything. "Amanda," Haley said, standing up to hug me. "So glad you came. We're really worried about Mom." "She's been in pain the whole time," Dylan added, which seemed ridiculous to me because he barely knew my mom, but he was already completely immersed in the theater. We sat down to dinner, and the show began. My dad suddenly became affectionate. "Amanda, to be honest, we're really proud of you," he said, as if he hadn't ignored me for weeks. "You've always been the smart one, the responsible one." Haley chimed in quickly. "Really, you're the best sister in the world. I don't know what we'd do without you." My mom smiled at me every 2 minutes. "I love you so much, sweetie." Dylan jumped in too. "Haley has told me that you're very generous. It's inspiring." I ate in silence, waiting for the blow. It finally arrived. When my mom cleared the dessert plates, she came back to sit down with a perfectly calculated face of pain. "I didn't want to bring this up at such a nice dinner," she said, "but we have to talk about my health." Everyone went quiet, looking at her with soap opera eyes. "They did more tests on me," my mom continued, "and the doctor says I have to start treatment right now. He recommended a rehabilitation clinic for severe cases like mine." She took a long pause, almost crying. "The problem is the cost. Comes out to $15,000. Our insurance won't approve it quickly enough, and if I don't do it soon, the doctor says it could get much worse." Haley brought her hand to her mouth. "Mom, no." Then she looked at me as if she were truly suffering. "I wish I could help, but with what I make at the coffee shop, I can't," she said, and looked around at everyone as if expecting the world to understand how unfair her life was. Dylan shook his head. "I would help, but right now I don't have a steady job." My dad sighed, looking at his plate as if he were carrying an immense sorrow. "We've been looking at how to do it, sweetheart, but we don't have that amount." And then all 4 of them turned to look at me at the same time. There was the spotlight. This was the moment they had given me the silent treatment for weeks to build up to. I looked at them. My mom with her fake worried face. My dad with his united family air. Haley biting her lip as if on the verge of tears. Dylan sitting there as if he were part of my story too. And I couldn't help it. I laughed. But not a little giggle, a belly laugh that doubled me over, that brought tears to my eyes, that left me gasping for air. They stared at me as if I had gone crazy. "Amanda," Haley said hesitantly. "What? What's so funny?" "This is serious," my dad murmured. I wiped my eyes, took a breath, and looked at them calmly. Silence fell like a stone. My mom let out a nervous laugh. "Oh, Amanda, I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you know," I said. "I heard you 3 weeks ago when I came over with the pie. I heard you say you were going to fake the arthritis thing to get $15,000 out of me. That it was for Haley's trip to Los Cabos, that you were going to ask me for that amount and keep a little extra." Haley turned pale. Dylan's mouth fell open. My dad lowered his gaze as if he wanted to disappear. I kept going because there was no turning back now. "I also heard you say that I'm naive, that I believe everything, that when I cooperate, then I'm a good daughter, and the rest of the time I'm just a nuisance to you." All color drained completely from my mom's face. "Amanda, I can explain." "No," I said, standing up. "There's no need." I looked at them one last time with a calmness that surprised me. "Enough. It's over." Haley stood up too, desperate. "Amanda, you can't." "Yes, I can," I replied. I turned around and headed for the door. No more transfers. No more paying rent. No more family dinners where I just show up to be the ATM. "But we're your family," Haley shrieked. Her voice was no longer sweet. It was full of rage. "You should have thought of that earlier," I said without raising my voice. "Today I'm canceling your rent." My mom started crying or faking crying. I didn't even know anymore. My dad stood up with his hands open, as if trying to fix it with words. "Amanda, wait, don't leave like this." I opened the door. I left years ago, only today I finally realized it. I walked out and didn't hear the rest. That night I got to my apartment and sat in front of my computer. I opened my banking app. I canceled the recurring transfer to my parents. I canceled the transfer for Haley's rent. It took me less than 10 minutes to undo 3 years of supporting 3 adults. And even though it sounds awful, it felt incredible. I wasn't even finished when the phone started ringing. My mom, my dad, Haley over and over again. I didn't answer any of them. Then the messages started. Demands, guilt trips, begging. Haley wrote me a huge text saying I was cruel and selfish. My dad sent a short one calling me ungrateful. My mom sent an endless message saying I had misunderstood everything. I deleted them without even finishing them. Around 10 at night, a call came in from an unsaved number. I answered out of habit. Amanda. Haley yelled from the other side. I'm calling from Dylan's phone. You have to listen to me. No, I said. I don't have to. You're selfish, she shrieked. You can't abandon us like this. Yes, I can, I replied and hung up. I blocked that number. Then I blocked my mom, my dad, and Haley. If they wanted to tell me something, they could send a letter. The following week was quiet, too quiet. I got up, went to work, came back, ate dinner, watched my shows, and for the first time in years I didn't have that feeling of waiting for the next emergency. That is, until they showed up at my building. It was a Tuesday around 7 in the evening when I heard loud banging on the door. They weren't normal knocks. It was as if they wanted to break it down. Amanda, Haley yelled from the hallway. We know you're in there, open up. I peeked through the peephole. All 3 of them were there. My mom with a hard face, my dad red with anger, Haley with blazing eyes. We have to talk, my dad yelled. Please, my mom said. But it didn't sound like a plea, it sounded like a demand. I stayed perfectly still. They banged and yelled for several minutes. The neighbors were surely hearing everything by now, and I could hear the building security guard moving in the hallway, unsure whether to step in or not. I stepped closer to the door and spoke loudly without yelling. If you don't leave right now, I'm going to ask security to escort you out, and I'll call the police. Haley let out a laugh. You wouldn't dare. I took out my cell phone, dialed, and held the phone close to the door so they could hear I was serious. The banging stopped abruptly. I heard them arguing in low, angry whispers, and then they left. After that, they left me in peace. Months passed. At first, I expected them to come back or find another way to contact me, but they didn't. Maybe out of pride, maybe because they finally understood I wasn't going to give in. I found things out through my cousin Jessica, who still talked to them from time to time. Your parents are struggling, she told me one day on the phone. They had to start working full-time. My dad started taking on more construction work. My mom got a job at a department store. They were tired, but they were pulling through. Haley went to live with Dylan at first, but that didn't last either. They spend all their time fighting, Jessica told me. Dylan is upset because Haley barely contributes. With what she makes at the coffee shop, she barely has enough for herself. I felt a little bit of guilt. I admit it, just a tiny bit, but it passed quickly. Haley was 28. It was about time. Do they talk about me? I asked. Jessica hesitated. Yes. Your mom says she misses you, but mostly they're angry. They say you abandoned them. I let out a short laugh. That's funny. The truth is, I didn't miss them. I thought it would hurt on birthdays, on special days, on those dates when you feel more sensitive. But when my birthday rolled around in November, it was light, even nice. I didn't get any fake calls, no sweet messages with a hidden agenda. I bought myself something I had wanted for a long time. I went out to dinner with friends. I felt free, and my savings account started looking better than ever. Without those $2,250 a month going out to my family, I could finally make early car payments and start saving up for a down payment on a condo. It wasn't magic. It was just me no longer supporting people who didn't want to support themselves. At work, I got closer to my coworkers. I made new friends. I started dating Alex, a guy from the IT department who was calm, smart, and above all, didn't see me as a resource. Months later, I took a trip to Italy, something I had always wanted and never allowed myself because family came first. This time I could, because I was finally using my money on myself. For the first time in my adult life, I was a priority. Right around Christmas, Jessica called me again. Things are rough with your family, she said. Your parents are working so much that they're already exhausted. And Haley and Dylan broke up last week. What happened? I asked more out of curiosity than anything else. Dylan got fed up, Jessica said. He told her it was time for her to get serious, to find a better job, or to stop expecting someone else to support her. Haley moved back into my parents' house. She was back at square one, only now my parents couldn't carry her like before because they could barely manage themselves. They've talked about reaching out to you, Jessica told me around the holidays. I stayed quiet for a moment. And what do you think? She asked. I thought about the laughter in the kitchen, about my mom's comment, about the scheme with my name on it, as if I were an object. Maybe someday, I said finally, but not until they take responsibility, and not until they truly apologize to me, not to save face but because they mean it. Jessica sighed. I understand. We hung up. I sat there in my living room, surrounded by the silence of my apartment. No yelling, no pressure, no fear of the next phone call. And that was when I understood it with a clarity that gave me peace. I was fine, I was at peace, and for the first time in years my life was mine. Comment. Setting healthy boundaries with the people we love is often one of the hardest things we ever have to do. We spend so much time pouring our energy into others that we sometimes forget we are not just a resource to be used. True kindness does not mean setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Letting adults face the consequences of their own choices is actually a necessary part of their personal growth. When you finally step back from a toxic dynamic, the initial guilt quickly fades into a deep sense of peace. You have the right to protect your financial stability, your mental health, and your own future. I hope this reminds you to look at your own relationships and ask yourself whether your generosity is being appreciated or simply expected. Walking away from a one-sided situation is a powerful act of self-respect. You deserve to surround yourself with people who value you for who you are, not just for what you can give them. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.